Okay, it looks like we're live, I think.
It says live on my end too.
Okay, yeah, it says live on here too. Okay, awesome.
Let's see. Okay, so there's a chat option.
Hmm.
Do you see that? Okay, so if you scroll to the left and a little pop-up bar will come up, and then there's a blue chat box thing.
Yeah, okay. I just clicked it. Is it showing up for you?
Mm-hmm, it is.
Okay, awesome.
I don't know how to tell if there's anybody in here.
Well, there's a zero Zuschauer thing in the right hand corner. So Zuschauer means viewers. So basically, when that number goes up, it means that people are watching.
Okay, I can't see that number on my side, I don't think.
Okay.
You said it's in the top right corner?
It's on the bottom right corner.
Bottom right corner?
Yeah. Underneath the title of the live stream.
Yeah, I don't see a title either. Okay.
Oh, weird.
That's
Okay.
okay. We'll give it a few more minutes and see if anybody joins, and then otherwise we can just talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah, because we're also going to have a lot of people watching after the fact anyway.
I think so, yeah.
Yep.
It's so funny that everything's in German. So
That is so weird that it's like that on yours. I thought that it was only going to be like that on
yours. Yeah. I bet there's some sort of setting I can change. I just don't know how.
Yeah, my thing has been in German for like a decade or longer.
Do you speak German?
Yeah.
That's cool. I lived in Germany when I was between 4 and 5 years old because my dad was in the army, and I went to like a German preschool, and I got to the point where I was like able to understand, like people would talk to me in German and I would talk back to them in English.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. I remember preschool was fun.
Yeah, it's always like it's always weird how that kind of happens because like, you know, I grew up speaking Farsi, and my mom would say something to me in Farsi and I wouldn't even know that she was speaking Farsi, so I'd answer in English.
Yeah, I think especially when you're little, like you don't really understand the distinctions between different languages, and it's really easy to do that for sure.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah. I wonder if the chat box is going to be in German for other people. Mine says group and chat.
I wonder. Man, I hope not. Gosh, that would be kind of weird. I guess that would explain that it would be weird. But yes, it looks like we do have, we are getting a couple of viewers. It says one, but there are probably going to be more soon too.
Yeah, we'll just give it to like 2:10 and then we'll start talking about it.
Okay.
Someone in the Goodreads group left a message just like last night saying that they just finished the book, but they can't come because they live in Sweden, and I guess it's like 9 p.m. in Sweden. So they're gonna have to watch it afterwards.
That would be kind of crazy. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm already almost done with the second one. I only have like 150 pages left.
Are you liking it better or worse than the first one?
I think I like the second one more.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I feel like more is going on and you're figuring out more stuff.
I mean, that's kind of how pretty much each book goes. I mean, like I said in like my little introduction to Wheel of Time video, there is kind of like between books 6 and 10, things kind of slow down, get a little like not as interesting. But for the most part, like the first 6 books, in my opinion, there's lots of action, and there's always like clues to things that are going on, and like always things to think about and try to make connections with. So I don't know. I love it.
Pretty awesome.
Okay, how many people are in the chat or who are watching?
It says 1.
Still 1. That's okay. We'll just go ahead and get started, I guess. So I guess the first thing we could talk about is just like our overall thoughts on the first book. I can go first. Obviously, I'm super biased because I love this series and I've read so many of the books. But I just think that the first book is a really good introduction to the world and really good, like, just like first part of the story. You get introduced to a lot of different aspects of the world and the world building, like a few different cities and some of the religion and the magic system and some of the main characters. There's gonna be a lot more main characters coming up, but the ones that we are introduced to in the first book are like the main characters. So I loved it, obviously. I saw that you gave
Yeah.
it 4 stars though. So like tell me like what you liked about it and what you were like not so sure about.
Well, yeah, I really liked it. I liked how it was actually really similar to Lord of the Rings, but at the same time, that made me kind of call a lot of the stuff that was going to happen.
Like
Um,
what stuff did you call? Do you remember?
like the thing, like what happens to Tom, and then
Mm,
yeah, and then
I was so sad about that.
yeah, I know. So I totally knew that was gonna happen because it's exact like I right when as soon as he showed up, I was like, oh, this is the Gandalf character. What happens to Gandalf is gonna happen to him, and it did. And I'm like, dang it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Tom was like one of
also,
my favorite characters, so that was very sad.
yeah, it's yeah, it's really sad. And then I I love how many badass women are in it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of like way too many fantasy worlds still have this whole thing about women being like inferior, but this series totally didn't.
Yeah, I
And
think it's really interesting that the main people who can use magic in this world are all women. Like, I think that's
mhm.
really cool.
Yeah, and it's kind of implied that like most women, if not all, have some kind of magical ability and everything. Like we haven't really met any women who kind of don't.
I think that's mostly just like who we are meeting because I think there are a lot of just like average women who don't have the ability to channel. Like, I mean, if you go back to the town where we were finding people, like Egwene's mom, like I don't know. It's hard to know because not everyone has been tested. So the way channeling works is either you, and I think this is so interesting too, like how he came up with this, but like either you're born with the ability and you learn how to use it, or there's a really good chance that you're going to die, or you can learn to use it, or I think there are people who can't like even have the ability to learn to use it. But I mean, they haven't systematically like gone through and tested everybody. So who knows what like proportion of the world that is.
Yeah.
I do think that Robert Jordan did a good job of creating strong female characters, but which is saying a lot, especially considering he's like an old white male who is writing fantasy. And in general, like old white male authors writing fantasy don't do a good job of that. But at the same time, I don't know if his female characters are completely like fleshed out and as complicated as they could be. Like there's definitely room to grow in that area, but I think he does it a lot better than a lot of other white male authors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think so too. And I think a lot of the room for having more well-rounded characters in a way comes with the fact that it's an older series as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, I mean, it's from like the late 80s, early 90s mostly, I guess.
Yeah.
And pretty much like the because I noticed like the second book was published in 1990 or
Mm-hmm.
something. So yeah, so basically it's books from that time tend to have like less they go less crazy with the storytelling
Mm-hmm.
if I notice, and like the farther into the 90s you get, the more storytelling we get
Mm-hmm.
and of everything. And so there's a lot because it's more focused on what's happening than who it's happening to and all of that.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. And I mean, this series took forever to be complete. Like the last book was published in 2014. So it takes place from like 88, I think, until 2014. So it's definitely a lot of growth in there. And I mean, in the future books, as he builds on all of the characters as you go along. So they definitely do grow across time.
Yeah.
So I don't, is it still just one person who's watching? Or
There were two for a second there, but now it's
okay,
back.
I just want to say that if you guys are watching, feel free to use the chat feature and like ask us questions and be involved in the conversation. You don't just have to watch. especially if you're here with us live, you can, you know, ask us questions and join the discussion too. So what do you think could have made you give the book a 5?
I don't know. I mean, I'm so stingy with 5.
Yeah, I get that.
Out of the 130 something books that I read in 2017, I only gave 15 of them 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 of those were the entire Queen's Thief series. So really,
that's the one by Megan Whalen Turner. Is that series?
Yeah.
I've been hearing good things about that. So you like that series?
Yeah, I loved it. It was so genius in this weird way that I had never really seen before. So yeah, so basically, so aside from that one series, I only gave 10 5-star ratings out of 130 something books. So it's kind of insane. So basically, I think that to give a book a 5-star rating, it has to be like the perfect book in a way. And so because there was so much room for improvement in the book still, even though I really liked it, that's why it only got a 4-star from me. Because I already like the second one better, even. So I know it's still going to get better as it goes on in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I tried to be stingy with my 5 stars, but I don't know. I'm not like super picky when I read either. And I do think that part of the reason why I gave this book 5 stars is because like it's hard for, like I've said before, it's hard for me to be really objective about this series because I've read it so much and I just grew up with it and I just love it. Like no matter what, I just love it. So my 5 stars is definitely biased. But yeah, I try to be stingy with my 5 stars, and I don't know, I had a lot of 5 stars last year, so maybe I'm not as stingy. Either I'm not as stingy as I would like to be, or I just picked out really good books to read. But, you know, someone once asked me the question, like, would you rather be a more critical reader and like enjoy less books, or enjoy books less? That's what I'm trying to say. And I was like, no, not really. I like enjoying books, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, because I think that it definitely is more important to get enjoyment out of reading. Otherwise, you just because it would suck to just read like 3-star reads for
all the time.
Yeah, you just get really, you get so bogged down in that.
Yeah.
I feel like. So I don't know, that would be, yeah, I definitely agree with you that it's better to enjoy the book than be super ultra critical. But at the same time, I write books like every day, so it's hard for me to not be critical. Yeah. I mean, I just read Zenith, and I actually loved reading it. I really enjoyed it, but I still only gave it 3 stars because there were like 2 things that bugged me the entire time. And so it's like that sort of thing where I kind of go like, so I don't even really rate based on how much I enjoyed a book. I rate it based on that and all this other stuff. It's really
cool. No, that makes sense. And I was trying to do that a lot last year, like rate things taking into account both writing and like both my enjoyment and like the writing and, you know, the quality of it. But I'm trying to rate things more based on my enjoyment, because what would happen is I would not enjoy a book, but then I would think, you know, it's a well written, like there's really nothing that wrong with it, I just didn't like it, and then I would end up giving something a higher rating than like what my enjoyment really was. And so I'm trying to be a little not harder on books, but, you know, just take into account how much I enjoy things more than the actual quality of what was written. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, everyone, you know, rates things a different way. Anyways, let's get back to the book. Let's see, I wrote down a few like questions to ask you and like things to talk about. Okay, overall thoughts, we already did. I was gonna see if you or anybody who's watching us had like questions about things that happened, like if there was something that you didn't understand, or if there were just any like overarching questions that you still had after you finished the first book. So anybody who's listening, if you have a question, you can type it in the chat box. Did you have any questions, Roya?
Probably not really. Like, not that were really answered in the second book somewhere. So
yeah, I know. That's what's hard about the series, is because so much stuff gets revealed in like subsequent books. So I don't know, it's
Yeah, and it
hard.
took a while to understand the magic system, but a lot of that is made clearer in the next book as well.
Oh,
So
really?
I felt like it took some time to really get what the magic system was all about, but then eventually it made a lot more sense just kind of as the story went on and as you see that more.
What I think is really interesting is how the magic system is also intertwined with this idea of like the wheel of time and the pattern. And that's actually something I wanted to talk about. Like, what do you think about the pattern as like fate and how, you know, it can kind of change, but there's like a general like guideline of how things are supposed to happen.
Hmm. I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is not the first book that I've seen kind of that concept ish.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes a lot of sense because, I mean, in a way, because also if you think about it, like if someone knows about events that are like predetermined to happen, they're more likely to end up changing them in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So there always has to be some amount of them not being 100% set in stone and whatnot. I don't know. It's
Mm-hmm.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I
that
think
this
that the
series.
series.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry. I'm
sorry,
getting
I'm
a little
getting
bit
a
of
little bit of
feedback.
feedback.
I can't
I can't
talk when I
talk when
hear
I hear.
myself. Hold on. Okay. So can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, now it started again. Oh well, I'll just try to talk through it. The idea of trying to so there's a lot of prophecy that happens in this series. Like there's been this whole the Cartharian cycle and all this stuff. So there's a lot of prophecies, and as the series like continues, you get to see how the things in the prophecies that like don't really make sense can come true, and how like even when people are trying to not make something come true, they still come true in their own way. And so like the whole series is basically them trying to fight against their fate. What I think is, so I actually don't know if I've read any other books that have this sort of idea where like, you know, certain things are set in stone and are always going to happen. But I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, so I haven't read that before. So I thought that was, I mean, obviously I read this when I was like 15 or something. So I hadn't read a lot of other fantasy. So I haven't come across that previously, but I think that's really genius. And on this latest reread, what I've really started to think about is that I kind of think that it's genius that Robert Jordan did this, because one of the common like complaints about other books is things plot devices and things happening in the plot that don't always make sense, and in a way, but they happen because they like have to happen for the story to play out the way they do. But in a way, Robert Jordan is kind of genius because he's created a infrastructure where there's always a reason for something. Like if something is super coincidental, you just blame it on the pattern and like on the main characters being Taviran, and like that's why this happened. And so I kind of think it was genius the way that he set it up, because he can do whatever the hell he wants, and even if it's really convenient, he fits it in. There's like a reason for it in the story. So I thought that was pretty smart of him. What other books have you read that you think are similar to that?
Um, there are a few. So, what comes to mind first is the Mist-Torn Witches series. So basically, in that series, it's about two sisters who, like, one of them can see people's futures, and the other one can see people's pasts. And the one who can see people's pasts can kind of choose whether to see it as an observer or actually see it through the person's eyes and feel what they feel and see what they see. And when she does the latter, the person is aware of it, they're seeing it too.
Oh.
But then the one who can see people's futures, she can't do that at all. She can only see it as an observer. So in a way, it's kind of like, it basically has to do with the fact that a lot of it might not be the exact thing that happens. Like some of it might change, and so there's no way, there's no exact way to tell if that's still going to play out the same no matter what or not,
Yeah.
depending on you know, especially if she tells the person that that's what they saw. Or that that's what she saw and all of that. So, and then there's like short stories where I've kind of seen that in too. I forget kind of which ones at the moment. I'm probably
That's
gonna
okay.
like.
I totally put you on the spot. I was just curious. Well, and going back to the magic, I've never come across a magic system previously where like males and females had different types of magic. Like that was new to me when I was reading this. And then also the idea of like the way the magic is described, it's you know, a lot of the series has to do with the pattern, and the idea is that it's kind of like not a quilt, but you know, something that is woven together with different strands, and the way that that is like similar to the way they do the magic, and how the power they take different types of strands. Like it's still elemental, but it's a different way to do elemental music that magic that I thought was really cool,
Yeah,
and
I
I
wonder.
still haven't seen anything like that. Did I say music more than once?
No, you just said music the once.
That's funny. So I really like the magic system. I think it's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's cool too.
Okay. What was like one of your favorite scenes, if you had one?
Hmm. Well, I'm already thinking I have favorite scenes from the second one, but I don't know if I really necessarily have favorite scenes from the first one. I'd have to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Let me think about what. I mean, it's so hard for me. I like so much of this book. I have my chapter summaries right here, so I'm just, excuse me, scrolling through them. I honestly think that like the beginning few chapters are sort of my favorite, where we like see Eamon's Field and like little provincial town and how everyone like knows each other. But probably my favorite scene is, I'm still thinking it's at the beginning of the book. It's probably when the chapters where Rand and his dad are going back to the farm for the night, and like the Trollocs come and they get attacked, and then he has to take his dad into town. I remember the first time I was reading that, I was totally like thinking by the time they got to town, everything would be fine. And like they get to town and like hell has broken loose. And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, what is happening? And I think the beginning of the book is like some of my favorite stuff of like the whole series, just because I don't know if it's just like the introductions or what, but I really like the beginning.
Yeah, that also makes everything that happens really sad, like extra sad, because it sets it up so well, like the
Mm-hmm.
environment, you care about these people.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's
Yeah.
kind of weird because when Moiraine is first introduced, I totally thought she was going to be a villain. I
Oh, really?
don't know why. I just totally 100% thought like she's evil, and she
Yeah.
totally wasn't. But based on the first time she's introduced, I just thought she was for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So were you surprised when you learned about Padan Fane, and like that's in this book, right? I mean, yeah, you know that he is a dark friend at the end by the end of this book. So were you surprised by that? I mean, especially considering the way he's introduced.
I don't know. I was kind of surprised, but I think that like pretty much it's the sort of book where like pretty much anybody could turn out to be
Mm-hmm.
something like a traitor or something else, because there are so many characters
Yeah.
and whatnot, but you don't necessarily see every single like person's point of view like in Game of Thrones or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
in a way, you like it does leave a lot of room for being caught unawares, but at the same time, like there are so many, there's so many people that you just know somebody's going to turn out to be bad or all kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Did you like that there were so many characters? Because there are so many characters.
Yeah, there are so many characters. I mean, even for like a fantasy book, it is a lot of characters. And at times it felt hard to juggle, especially towards the beginning where a lot of people's names are very similar. Because you have
Mm-hmm.
like Rand and Tam and Matt and like people whose names are all very like one syllable and very similar. And then
Mhm.
I kept getting Ninav and Egwin mixed up the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's funny.
even in the second book, I kept like getting them mixed up randomly because I don't know why. If it's I don't know why I think their names just sound really similar. And it doesn't help that they kind of do a lot of the same stuff magically. And so I kind of am like, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that being confusing. I don't know. That's hard for me to speak on just because I've read this so many times that like I don't have a problem with most of the characters. I mean, there's some like characters that are introduced later on that I don't know as well, but all the characters that are in this first book I know pretty well. So
Yeah,
I can't really speak on that. But I mean, that's one of the things that I wanted to mention in like my introduction to Wheel of Time video is that there are a ton of characters. And if
fun.
someone doesn't like having a lot of point of views or having to keep track of a lot of characters, that's going to be a big like downside to reading this series.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up having to look at so much fan art and stuff while I was reading.
Mm,
For some
that's
reason,
funny.
that
I
kept.
have I have a friend at work who's read, I think he's on the second book right now. And for some reason, he says that he pictures Moraine as being me because she's like really short and has dark hair, and I'm really short in real life. And so every time he sees me, he always says, "How are you doing, Moraine Sedai?" And it's really funny.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah. And I've never done any sort of like cosplay or anything, but I think that would be fun to do. If I was to cosplay somebody, I could totally do Moraine.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have more questions. I don't mean to be like interrogating you, but I mean, all these questions I'm also answering, so I'm not really interrogating you.
No, not
Okay,
really.
so the next one is favorite main character and why. My favorite main character, it's really hard. I mean, I think Moraine is definitely one of my favorite main characters because she just kind of knows what's going on and like she's a little bit manipulative, but she is trying to do what she thinks is like for the best for the world. But out of the like main three boys, my favorite is actually Perrin. And I don't really have a reason for that. I mean, I think it's partially his personality. He's, got this really careful personality because he's so like used to being big and like bumbly and always afraid he's going to hurt people. And I just think he's like the sweetest teddy bear. And then the whole stuff where he like, meets Elias and the like wolf stuff. I love that stuff so much. And then he goes on and does other things in the rest of the series that I also love. But even from the beginning, I think Perrin's my favorite out of the three.
Yeah, I like Perrin a lot as well, but I think it might be a tie between him and Rand out of the three main characters because for
Yeah.
some reason I always feel like I constantly am always relating to like the main character in a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Harry Potter and in everything basically. Like I always think that that's what happens when I read something. I don't know why. And then also I feel like we don't get to know Matt quite as well in the first book because he spends a lot of the time not being quite himself in some weird way. And
Yeah.
so I felt like, yeah, after a certain point, the Matt that we're getting is not really Matt anymore, or we don't know if it is. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so I feel like we don't get to know him as well out of the three main characters for some reason. It's really odd.
No, I think that's true. And I think that has to do a lot with the dagger that he acquired and the stuff that happens with that, which I think you're not meant to really understand exactly like how bad what's going on with him is until the end of this book and like into the next one. So I agree. Yeah, you don't really get to know Matt, and honestly, Matt's kind of a shithead. Like he's the troublemaker that always wants to do like the wrong thing. And I like Matt. He's funny, and he's definitely an interesting character. And you get to know him a lot better in future books, especially some of the other stuff that happens to him is like really interesting. I can't wait till we get to the other books because there's like so much to talk about. Oh yeah, but I do like Matt. I like Rand a lot. I think he has a really big character arc. They all do. So he'll change a lot as the books go along. And in some of the later books, you don't understand what he's like. You don't get into his mind as much as you do in the beginning books. And I wish that we did, but I think part of that is why I don't love him as much. But as a like beginning character, I think he's really great, and he's got a lot of stuff on his shoulders. Poor guy. Okay. So we kind of talked about the rule of fate already and the use of the pattern, magic, male versus female. And I talked about prophecies a little bit, but I think the prophecies in this book and series is like one of the reasons why I love it. I've learned over time that I'm just a sucker for like books that have prophecies in them. Like I love hearing prophecies and then seeing how they unfold, because typically it's not the way that you would expect. Yeah, and that's what I love about it, because even though you have this prophecy and you can study it to your heart's content, like you never know how it's actually going to come true or if it's going to come true, and I really like that. Do you like seeing prophecies in books too?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and mainly because of kind of that same reason, because you really don't, you really don't know. I mean, you think about like Oedipus and how he was told that he's gonna marry his mother and kill his father, and he's like, "Oh crap, I better skip town then." And it turns out he was adopted, and if he had just never heard of that prophecy, then he would have ended up fulfilling it or any of that stuff.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Oh crap, I ended up fulfilling that horrible prophecy anyway." And it's never really, yeah, like so often it can be what you don't think.
Mm-hmm. I actually haven't read that many books that have prophecies in them. I was trying to think of like other books that I've read. Nothing really comes to mind except just like in January, I was telling about this the other week. I finished The Sword of Truth by Terry Goodkind. And that book has prophecies in it, but they don't start talking about the prophecies until the very end of the first book. And so I know it's going to be a bigger role in the next books or whatever. So I'm excited I read the first 3 in that series like years ago, and I've watched the TV show. So I kind of know some of the stuff that's going to happen, but I definitely, that's one of the reasons why I think I enjoy that series, because I like prophecies. So if you have any other good like prophecy books or series, definitely let me know.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, what immediately comes to mind is the Warrior Cats books, but I don't even remember what any of the prophecies in those are. I just know there are a lot of them.
Yeah, I haven't actually read that series. Is that middle grade or is it young adult?
I think I don't know, I think it's middle grade, I feel like.
Yeah. But you like that series? I
Yeah.
remember seeing them around
Because it's one of
whenever
those things where it starts off a lot, like the first series of it is way better and has way more depth. And then the second one is almost as good. And then when you get to the third one, it's like, it's not quite as good. And it doesn't have as much depth. And you're like, okay. But there are a lot of people who still like the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate when the last book is disappointing in a series. I finished 3 series last year and all of them were disappointing endings.
That sucks.
Yeah, sucks. Let's see. I think the last thing that I have like on my list of things that we could talk about is the ending of the book and like what you thought of it.
Well, I think it ended kind of like, I don't know. At this point, I'm so far into the second book, where one ended and the other one began, but I think the ending was almost the best part, because it really leaves you kind of going like, this is going to play a bigger role in the second book, and so is this, and blah blah blah. And it's you know that a lot more is going to go on.
Yeah. So one thing that I really like about the ending is when they go to the Eye of the World and they get to meet the Green Man, which I think he is so cool. Which again, that's another thing that's like really similar to Tolkien, obviously, like the tree that walks and that kind of stuff. The other things that are really similar to Tolkien, I think, are the merge rule, and then just like the idea that there's like an evil entity or whatever. But other than that, I feel like a lot of it is not that similar to Tolkien. I don't know. What other things did you think were
Also
similar to
about a
Tolkien?
group of people that leave their town and because there are people after them and they keep
That's true.
having to run away from the people after them, and they do have a like the main person has an artifact of some kind that he doesn't know what it is. I mean, in this case it's a
You're
sword.
talking about his sword?
Has yeah, and then Matt has
Oh,
some
it has
weird
that.
thing, and then but
Yeah.
like mostly I'm talking about the sword.
Mhm.
Because he doesn't really know where it came, like it came from somewhere else to the town,
Mhm.
and then like it's so there is a lot of
Yeah.
similarity there as well, but in the second book there really isn't as much. Like certain
Yeah, I really think the series takes on a life of its own, but there are a lot of things in the first book that are very similar. I agree.
yeah, it's really weird. So like when I first started reading it, I was like, huh, this reminds me of something.
Yeah,
Basically.
and I think some of the names, like Egwene and Gawain, and some of the names like that are very remind me of the Merlin like world too. So there are definitely like King Arthur sorts of inspirations as well. And I feel like I was reading somewhere else. There's some other inspiration that I hadn't. Oh, someone on the internet said there was like mythology, like Greek and Roman myths in there, and I don't see that at all. But whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if I see that either, but
Yeah.
yeah, but thinking about that, maybe maybe I'll catch more more stuff
Yeah.
similar to that. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. So we were talking about the end of the book. And I really like getting introduced to the Green Man and seeing like what the Eye of the World actually was and how all that happened. I remember when it ended and they like find forget what it was, but some sort of like trunk or something, and the Horn of Valir is in there. Like that totally surprised me the first time I read it. I was like, what is this thing? And it's so interesting because it, obviously is part of the next book. But I I don't know, I remember being really surprised that that was in there because it's not where people were expecting it to be like at all. The second book is really good. I'm getting excited to talk to you about that next month. You should like make notes and stuff so that
Totally should.
yeah,
Yeah.
make sure you remember all the things you want to talk about.
Yeah.
I've definitely been using my chapter summaries a lot
Notes
because
too.
oh, say that again.
Whenever let's start the third one, I'll make notes on that one too.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think you're gonna read like 2 a month, or what do you think?
I have no idea. It really just depends because obviously they are pretty long, so I don't have a clue if I'm gonna like necessarily. I mean, it's only the beginning of February, and I'm trying to finish the second one today. Um, but I don't know. I have so much stuff I want to read this month that I don't necessarily know if I'm going to get to the third one until next month or not.
Well, I mean, if you don't get to it till later, that's not a big deal since
Yeah.
you're ahead of the rest of the readathon. So it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. I can't decide when I so the next book I'm supposed to read is the fifth book, and I don't know when I'm going to read it. Like part of me wants to read it like a month ahead of the group so that I can stay on top of the discussion boards and things like that. But I also feel like reading it with everybody too. But how do I run the discussion boards if I don't know what's going to happen? So. I mean, these books are fine because I know them pretty well, but once we start getting into the territory where I like don't remember stuff, I'm not really going to want to spoil myself for things. Like I'm going to want to read it first. So in that sense, do I want to read ahead of time or what? And I guess the fifth book would be like what, May or something, and I don't know if I want to wait till May to read the next book. So we'll see. I haven't decided when I'm going to read the next one. I think I want to stay at least a month ahead. I think. I don't
Makes
know.
sense.
Yeah. What else about the ending did I like? Oh, so at the end, Rand has this big battle and he defeats Baalzamon and he thinks he's defeated the Dark One. What did you think about that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I kind of
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Well,
have any.
it's the first book, so like knowing what I know now, I'm like, well, obviously there's a lot more to the story, but I don't know what I thought the first time I read it. Like, did I believe him? Like, did I think he was right? So that's kind of what I was wondering, was like if you thought he really defeated the Dark One.
Oh, probably not, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 14-book series. How could he defeat the Dark One in the
Yeah,
first
because
book?
obviously there would have to be way more stuff that happens, obviously.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's a little naive of Rand to think like, I beat him my first try. He's dead. Yeah, it's not that easy, bud. Not that easy.
well, yeah, kind of like, Harry Potter defeating Voldemort in the first book, and really, obviously who he defeats is Professor Quirrell, who Voldemort is possessing. Voldemort
Yeah.
is still out there, and it takes
Yeah.
like forever for him to defeat him. So
Yeah. But at the end of this first book, Rand is like, "Oh yeah, I defeated him. He's dead." And I mean, I think Lan and Moraine are a little like, I don't know, but Rand is so convinced. He's like, "Yes, I did it." What a naive little boy.
well, but like the others also kind of know more than he does too, just from everything that they've experienced. He's still really young and everything, and in the ways of
Mm-hmm.
the world and whatnot. So it makes sense that he'd be really overconfident and just be like, "Yeah, totally," and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. Whereas they've probably faced all kinds of crap, basically.
Yeah.
That they,
They're like, life's not that easy. I don't know. What else do you want to talk about?
I don't know.
Um, so were there any like characters that you thought were super unrealistic or like anything that didn't make sense?
I don't know. I mean, unrealistic how?
I don't know. Like Rand learning to use his sword and becoming semi good at that. Like, did that seem like a realistic progression, or do you feel like it happened quickly?
I don't know. I mean, given how much traveling they did and how little else they probably really had to do, and
Mm-hmm.
and everything, it sort of makes sense. It didn't
Yeah.
really jump out at me as he gained that experience too quickly or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um especially since like at the beginning of the second book he is still like learning how to use the
Mm-hmm.
sword, basically. So it didn't, so being able to fight with it didn't seem that unrealistic. I mean, there always are books where it jumps out to me that that person learned that magic really quickly. It took like
Right.
seconds and suddenly they're the best at it. Like, that doesn't make any sense, but this didn't jump out to me
Feel
as
like that.
too fast.
Good. Oh, so in our discussion board, someone, Danny, mentioned thinking that Nynaeve and Lan's relationship like kind of came out of the blue. Did you feel that way, or did you kind of see that coming? I mean, it probably didn't help that you were having a hard time keeping Egwene and Nynaeve like separate in your mind.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I kind of had it in my head that he would get together with Moiraine for some reason. And
I think he set it up that way. Like, I think that's what you're supposed to think, that there is more than just a regular relationship going on there. But they are definitely not romantically involved.
yeah, I think it definitely did feel to me like you are supposed to think that in a way. And so, yeah, so I totally know what you mean. But yeah, so I was a bit surprised by that. I did think it kind of came out of the blue in a lot of ways. I think it really did. I feel like it does end up being kind of a cute relationship in a way, but yes, it did sort of come out of the blue. But you also mentioned in your video about tips for reading The Wheel of Time and everything that you're not going to find well-written romance and whatnot. So I didn't really expect, like, I kind of expected it to come out of the blue in a way.
Yeah. I'm glad I was able to like warn you about that. There are other relationships that happen too that I don't remember how I felt about them the first time I was reading the series and if I thought they were set in or not, but on reread, I definitely am noticing, oh, there wasn't much buildup for this, but it's such a weird feeling because in my mind, these characters have always been together, and like they just go together. Like I can't think of them any other way. But that is something that I have noticed on this reread is things, relationships happening kind of quickly, and people. I mean, it's not quite like insta love, but some of the relationships almost seem like it, which is kind of weird to say because it's such a long book and such a long series that how can anything be instant? I mean, and it's really not instant, but some things do happen a little fast.
Well, because there's so much else going on in the book that has nothing to do with the romantic relationships between anybody. So so then by the time that does become a topic, it feels very like suddenly people are into each other. Like I don't
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lan is one of my favorite characters too. I want to know so much more about his backstory. Like I know a little bit from some of the later books, but I want to know more. Like I think he's so interesting.
Yeah, because I definitely feel like in the second book we start to get to know him more, but I feel like he didn't
Mm-hmm.
get a whole lot of spotlight in the first book. Like
Yeah.
he's sort of like one of the, people who is almost just randomly there while they're traveling, and that's how it felt to me anyway. And so yes,
Yeah.
I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of chance for character development on his part in this book.
Yeah, you definitely get a lot more as the series goes on. What do you think about Loyal and his like species of Ogier? Like, do you think that's interesting, or do you like him as a character?
I don't know, kind of.
Yeah, I don't think you get to know him all that well in the first book, but you get to know him more. I think the Ogiers in general are an interesting creature. Like I've never come across a creature like that before, and I love that everyone always, when they first see him, think he's a Trolloc, and then they realize that he's not. And I love that they like live a long time, and so that makes them very slow and like thoughtful. And he's so like bookish and loves history, and he's one of my favorite characters too. I like him a lot. He's always the like voice of reason. When he thinks that like Rand or Matt are rushing into something, he's like, "You humans, you need to slow down." It's so funny. And
Yeah, I also like how we have fantasy races in this that are totally not typical at all, in a
yeah,
way.
yeah, I think so too. The Tinkers are also like a cool bunch, and you learn more about them in other books. Like everything else in the series, you learn more later. But they're some of my favorite, like the I don't know, like a culture, I guess. Like they're one of my favorites. I like them a lot. They're really interesting, and the whole idea that like the way of the leaf and how they don't want to harm anybody or anything. But how do you do that when you live in such a dangerous world? I think it's interesting.
Hmm.
All right, we're coming up on an hour. I guess we can call it. Unless you have any other things you want to talk about. I think those are all the things that I had written down.
Okay, well, yeah, I can't think of anything else either. So I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you're enjoying the second book, especially like more than the first book. I think they like I in my reread, the fourth book has been my favorite so far. You learn there's a lot of reveals that happen in the fourth book.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, there's a lot of like world building and things that you learn. So I am looking at the calendar, and we can just kind of brainstorm real quick. But the first Saturday of March might not be ideal for me, but I could either do the Sunday or like the second Saturday in March. So look at your schedule and let me know what you think.
All right.
And we
I
can do an announcement. I think this time we'll try to maybe do the announcement a little bit
sooner.
earlier, like maybe mid-month or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know how much time people want to know about the exact time, like ahead of time. I don't know how all this works.
yeah, I have no idea.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess we can end it, and then you're gonna post it on your channel?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let me know if you have any problems with that, but I'm sure you can figure it out. I've
Yeah.
never done it before, but this is all an adventure. We're all figuring it out together.
Yeah, because the test one that we did actually is still on my channel as private without my doing anything. So
Oh, really? It just, oh,
yeah,
that's
so
cool.
hopefully it's pretty much just gonna be
Like
there.
change the setting or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, good luck with Unicorn-a-thon. Is that what it's called? Or is it Unicorn Reads, right?
Yeah.
um, I don't think any of the books that I'm reading next week qualify. That's always my problem with readathons is that I always, not that I have my reading planned out, but I always know like my next book that I'm going to read or two. And usually I don't want to change that up. And if it doesn't fit with a readathon, then I'm kind of like, eh. Well, and I mean, I'll still read as much as I can, but it doesn't fit with a theme, sadly.
Well, you never know is the thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, girl. Well, you have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. See you later.
Fun hanging out with you. Bye, Horatio.
iPod.
Oh, is that iPod? I
Yeah,
can't tell the difference. They're just.
they look alike though. It's weird.
Does iPod have what? Oh no, I thought it. When he looks down, is it a he or she?
She.
iPod. She. When she looks down, it looks like she has white eyebrows, but it's just like the angle.
Yeah, it's her like skin up here has less fur for some
Mm-hmm.
weird.
Yeah. Do they look different at all, her and Horatio? Like, does Horatio have longer fur, maybe?
Yeah, he totally does.
Okay.
He has a shorter nose too. Like he totally looks like a lion, and she looks like a panther because she has an underbite. So
All right, I'll have to keep an eye out for that so I can tell the difference.
yeah, it's funny. I have no idea. But yeah, they both kind of have some similar features, though. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. All right. Bye, iPod. Bye, Roya. Have a good rest of your weekend.
You too.